The following appeared in the Arkansas Democrat, November 15, 1959, written by Fred Petroselli.
Joe sat up in bed, then he smelled it, smoke. He leaned over and shook his friend Robert Harris. The pungent odor of smoke was strong by now. Joe's shouts had awakened the rest of the 70 youngsters. Some of the boys began to yell hysterically.
I ran to the door and started banging on it, but the place was full of smoke, and I had to back away. We were all trapped.
Complete panic had set in. Some of the larger boys charged the door. They broke it down. The flames leaped into the room. Some of the fellows were scorched in their tracks. Joe clawed, fought, and screamed, and even as the flames licked at his heels, Joe was swept outside of the building by the surge of humanity behind him.
Sometimes I wake up at night and I can see those boys. It was like a dream. Me and Robert were just lucky, I guess. I still don't know how we got out of that furnace.
Soon, only fellows like Robert Harris and Joe Nelson will remember the tragic fire. They'll wake up at night hearing the terrified cries of anguish, the cries of friends who perished in the fire.
Welcome to part 2 of the Coroner's Report podcast, Locked Doors, Lost Boys. I'm Tracy Carrington. In this episode, we return to Wrightsville, Arkansas, to NBIS, where a tragedy in 1959 left 21 young boys dead and an entire state searching for someone to blame. Remember, these were boys locked away for things like truancy, theft, or just being orphans with nowhere else to go.
I'm Steve Navoychek, and for years I served as a coroner in 2 of Arkansas's largest counties and later as director of the State Crime Lab. These days I spend more time walking my dog Butter, but I haven't stopped looking at the stories that linger in the shadows. In this episode, we turn to the fire itself at Wrightsville Boys Industrial School. Nearly 70 black teenagers lay asleep inside a wooden dormitory built in 1936.
At times in this episode, you'll hear AI-generated voices reading from historical accounts. These aren't original recordings, but recreations meant to bring the words of the past back to life. We also hear from several experts who help us understand what really happened that night. And remember, these boys weren't hardened criminals. Some were guilty of nothing more than childhood mischief, pranks, as harmless as soaping a storefront window on Halloween. The first to wake up was Roy Davis. He was just 15 years old. His words still carry the terror of that moment.
I woke up smelling smoke. I ain't never forgotten that night. We were locked in. I knew we had to get out. Those windows had heavy mesh screens on the inside and outside, anchored in with 16-penny nails. It was like fencing.
In those first frantic seconds, the dorm erupted in confusion. Boys scrambled from their bunks, some calling out for help, all of them looking for a way out. Jesse Carpenter, one of the older boys, jumped into action. Roy Davis remembers what happened next.
Jesse went up through there to the door and tried to kick that door in, the door we come in and out of. Jesse tried to go through the fire till the fire kind of lit him up and he made a retreat. See, that's when all that smoke came shooting in more so.
Jim Hawley is a retired New York City firefighter and works now as a pediatric nurse in the ER.
When you get startled like that or afraid, your first inclination is to breathe in. So you figure he kicks the door in, the thing lights up, superheat comes out, and the first thing you do, you breathe all that superheat in and it just cripples you right there.
Retired New York City Fire Lieutenant Keith Hulse says the boys were just seconds away from safety.
It's amazing when you get the fires, and if you open up the bedroom door, that oxygen comes in and it just fuels that fire and goes throughout the house. The rooms with the doors closed, they stay untouched. They're not burnt. They're not allowing that free flow of oxygen and the heated gas to come in. But that boy kicking that door open actually was the worst thing that he could possibly have done. The fire and all the heated smoke got drawn right in there.
If Jesse had kicked open the outer door to the courtyard, the fire might not have spread so fast. They were so damn close to surviving. One simple mistake. But how could Jesse have ever known? He was just trying to survive and get his friends to safety.
Now, if he would have kicked out the outside door, then they all could have got out.
Jesse had no idea what hell awaited him on the other side of that locked door. Fire investigator Keith Hulse explains what happens when panic takes over during a fire.
People get tunnel vision. We always go through this door, and they forget, oh, there's a door back here, or there's a door here. They just so used to doing it, it's muscle memory. They just do it.
18-year-old Jesse Carpenter collapsed in that doorway and died right there. When firefighters discovered his body the next morning, they believed he had simply sat down and leaned against the door until the flames consumed him. It wasn't until Roy Davis was interviewed by the Arkansas Times in 2008 that we realized what actually had happened.
Think about that. The door didn't save them. The door made it worse. When it opened, the fire got a blast of oxygen. Archie Ray Poole, 16 years old, remembered waking when he smelled the smoke. It was likely after Jesse had kicked in the door, creating a backdraft.
I yelled and asked someone if the wood heater had been lit. They said no, and then I saw fire sweeping against the ceiling. I started yelling and ran over to a window to get out.
Fire expert Keith Hulse says that statement makes sense.
Fire comes out, fire rises, and you're going to get all that hot air and smoke up there, and you'll see the flames. It'll all be like swirling around.
Some of the boys rush toward the windows, pushing against one another.
You get a fire that starts to eat the oxygen in one particular area, then it starts to rise and spread out to the left and to the right, and then when the guy kicked the door in and it lit him up, that makes all perfect sense of a fire that had been burning for a while and was on the verge of a backdraft, was starving for oxygen, and that kick in the door just ignited that place in the building where he was.
The boys were not first responders, and they had no training to face a fire. They woke in darkness and smoke, disoriented and afraid. Some boys managed to escape, half-dressed, barefoot, or still in their pajamas. Superintendent Buddy Gaines later gave conflicting accounts of when the adults on campus first became aware of the fire.
Wilson Hall was the first to reach the building, and he entered through the front door, which opened into the classroom. Hall tried to go through the room to the dormitory door, but was driven back by the flames. That's when he ran around the building and tried to reach the dormitory door that opened into the courtyard, but couldn't get to it because of the heat from the fire.
Some of the boys rushed toward the windows, pushing against one another in desperation. Our fire expert, Keith Hulse, says in a fire, you have just one goal.
And then once it was a mad rush, you have 70 people trying to get out two windows. The windows were big, but they're up a little, so it's not like windows were low to the ground. You have to get up and get out.
A few hours later, Robert Patterson described the scene to reporters.
The smoke and flames spread so quick, I thought I'd never get out. They just fought something terrible to get out of the windows. Someone pushed me down. Somehow I got up and crawled out the window.
George Williamson was also 16 and says he woke up to chaos.
It was a madhouse. The room was full of smoke, and it seemed like everybody was trying to get out at the same window.
Jim Hawley paints a stark picture of what these boys faced, waking up to the smoke, the chaos, and the heat so intense that instinct just took over.
So think about these kids waking up to screams and yells, and the first thing they do is sit up, and they breathe in smoke, and they're choking. They can't see 2 feet in front of them, and they just kind of all go to congregate to one place away from the fire. And unfortunately, that was a place where they had no egress out of the building.
Think about that. 70 kids in one room clawing for the same narrow exits, breathing in carbon monoxide, smoke closing in, and fire crawling across the ceiling.
Keith Hulse gives us an idea of what those boys faced.
Once you have a mad rush to get out, you're going to get X amount of people to get out before the other ones just get overcome with smoke. That would have happened in an open room like that, with the fire coming in like that. It's not going to take long at all. It's not just smoke, it's superheated gas. The flames. That smoke is hot.
Nolan Fortner Jr. was listed as one of the dead in early reports, but he made it out to tell his story.
The room was so filled with smoke, I could hardly see. I pushed one boy aside and crawled out.
Your body is telling you, you got to get out this window. There's no rules. The brain is telling you, survive. The kids that couldn't get out there, they're going to be overcome with smoke, and then that's it. They're going to be laying there.
That's what it came down to. Every second mattered. Push past someone else or die where you stood.
Had to count the beds and lay low. It was 8 beds up when you count them. If you overcount or undercount, you had only one window that was open. We got out the window.
8 bunks to the window. That was the only way out. Those who made it were the lucky ones. The rest were trapped.
Keith Hulse says those screens, they trap in the heat and smoke.
Even like a normal house, the screens, that's going to hold a lot of smoke in. It's not like, the screen's there, I can breathe real good now. Even with just regular screens, it keeps the heat and smoke in there. I mean, you put your mouth up against it, you'll get some air, but you have to realize that you have not just smoke, it's going to be heated smoke. Hot gases are in the smoke. It's like heated smoke. So now you're starting to get burnt. Once you start coughing, what do? You cough, and then you inhale bigger. It's not like you just cough and now you're breathing normal. No, once you cough, now you're sucking in more air because you're trying to breathe, so the smoke is coming in more.
Those who escaped were unable to do much for the others still trapped inside. They heard the boys screaming and tried to call them toward the open windows, but the noise and smoke made communication impossible. Some went to the other side and attempted to pry off a screen, but they could not get a firm grip enough to remove it.
Trustee Charlie Meadows was only 15, and he was asleep in the chapel or the classroom area with another boy. He was haunted by what he saw that night.
Another inmate woke me up, and I saw the fire in the caretaker's office. I tried the door to the dormitory and found it locked. I went around to the rear of the dormitory building and removed the window screen. I ran for help, and then I ran back to the dormitory and tried to help some of the boys climb out of the window, but the flames were just too hot. They were yelling for help.
It's morning. Again. You've hit that snooze alarm 3 times. Your cat is sitting there judging you. And your normal coffee tastes like sadness. Enter BadRabbitCoffee.com. Roasted right here in Western Pennsylvania in small craft batches because life's too short for mediocre caffeine. And BadRabbitCoffee.com will ship it straight to your door. Yes, worldwide. So even if you're hiding from adulthood in another time zone, you can still start your day like a civilized human. Tastes like motivation. Get your monthly coffee fix at BadRabbitCoffee.com. Bad Rabbit, because mornings are hard enough.
Wilson Hall, the farm manager, was also trying to get the boys out.
They were screaming and hollering in there. You couldn't make out any words or anything.
In the end, survivors said that luck alone determined who lived and who did not.
Imagine waking up and not knowing if the nightmare was real. That hesitation, just a few seconds, might have cost lives. Fire expert Jim Hawley says the fire was like an explosion.
Anytime a fire burns, it starts to burn all the oxygen in that place, whether it be the caretaker's offices or a small confined space. When you add oxygen to it, yes, you can create a backdraft, and it lights up like an explosion. You know, it's hungry for oxygen. And if you could kick a door open suddenly and all that air, 21% oxygen, comes into the room, it's like a feeding frenzy. And you can get almost an explosion.
According to a 2008 Arkansas Times article, survivor Roy Davis explained that because of the U-shaped layout of the building, the boys could see the fire burning in the caretaker's office and knew what was coming for them.
A severe storm had passed through the area that night. After the front moved on, the temperatures dropped to 38 degrees. Many of the boys escaped with little clothing. Archie Poole remembered those conditions.
As I climbed out of the window, I could see the other kids fighting each other to get out. There was a whole lot of smoke and shouting. Then I saw Charlie, the night sergeant, had managed to get one of the window coverings off. So I got out. After we got outside, a bunch of us started yelling to the others the way to get out. But there was so much smoke and everything by that time that I guess they didn't hear us. I saw one boy with blood running down his arm where he broke a window to get out. At one window, 4 boys were hitting the window with a chair, trying to get it out.
The Charlie, whom Poole mentioned, was a 16-year-old Charlie Meadows, the trustee, who acted as night sergeant but didn't have a key to the dormitory.
George Gray was just 14 years old and from Little Rock. He somehow made it through a window. The newspaper described a kid who was in shock. All he could manage to do is stutter out his name, his age, and his hometown. He had been cut on his right ear escaping.
By the time the boys fought their way out, the dormitory was an inferno. The boys were left stunned, half-dressed and shoeless, standing watching their friends being burned alive.
Superintendent Buddy Gaines tried to save those boys.
I got a call around 3:15 in the morning. The dormitory was burning fiercely when I got there. The boys were screaming inside. I tried to get in, but it was impossible.
I can't imagine the terror and just sheer frustration felt by the boys and the staff at the school. The boys watched the building collapse with their friends inside.
And then came the sound of sirens. The call had gone out to Little Rock.
Although Wrightsville was outside the city limits, the Little Rock Fire Department dispatched Engine 13 from its Roosevelt Road station about 10 miles away.
The fire department logged Engine 13 rolling out of the station at 4:33 a.m. The trip would have taken close to 18 minutes. When the 3-man crew arrived, they faced a scene of devastation.
But back then it would be like normal to have a rig that size. Unfortunately, they didn't have any hydrants in the area where they could have hooked up to the hydrant. They had 3 guys working, and then later on they got relieved by these other 3 or 4 guys. Back then, there was no OSHA that said you have to have X amount of men on a fire engine.
Captain William Seaton later recalled the moment his firefighters tried to get water to the flames.
The call came in at around 3:30 a.m. A pumper from Little Rock rolled to the scene and arrived at about 4:45 a.m. We had to build a ramp and stretched hose to the nearest water in the swimming pool. That was about 550 feet away.
Keith Hulse says firefighters really were hampered by no water.
If you have access to water, that's the main thing. When you pull up and there's no hydrants and all you have is a little pool, even when they draft, you get only like X amount of minutes and then you're out of water. It's not like you put that hose to draft and now you have all the water you want. Once that sucks up, that's it. You're out of water.
After the pool was dry, I guess they could have hooked up to the well that was there. Remember, this was just outside the city limits, sitting in the middle of a cotton field. Jim Hawley says by this time, there wasn't anyone left to rescue.
The first responding engine or pumper truck should have water on it for a quick attack. Some of them in rural areas like that, they carry 1,000 gallons of water on. They would give them a good 10 minutes of fire suppression while the secondary units come in to find the water source and get the water to the original engine in front of the scene. If you come into a fully involved building that's supposed to be occupied and the roof is already caved in, it's been burning for over an hour, well, at that point, it becomes not search and rescue anymore. It's just recovery and suppressing the fire.
According to historian Griff Stockley, the firefighters faced another obstacle on arrival. The ground was so muddy that they had to lay down 60 feet of lumber to keep the fire truck from sinking. Only then could they draw water from the school's pool in an effort to cool the burning building. Captain Seaton later stated that it took 45 minutes after their arrival to get water on that fire.
By the time water reached the building, there was little fire left to fight. The exact time when reporters arrived is unclear, but records suggest members of the press reached the scene relatively early and started asking questions.
As firefighters cooled the smoldering remains, they made a grim discovery. Beneath the collapsed structure, the bodies of the boys began to appear.
The body of one boy, Jesse Carpenter, was found in the doorway leading to the chapel. He died where he fell after kicking in the door to escape. 2 more were along the south wall toward the rear of the wing, and the other 18 were found in a 15-foot space at the 2 rear windows on the north side.
Jim Hawley says these reports make sense.
There was one way in, one way out. The fire started in the front of the building, which makes perfect sense. And all the bodies were located at the farthest point away from the fire that they could get because they had no way out. All the windows were wired shut.
They were piled on top of each other. First responders at the scene were horrified. One state police trooper on the scene told the press he'd been with the state police for 20 years, and it was the worst disaster he'd ever seen. He said the smell from the scene made him sick.
Superintendent Buddy Gaines was visibly upset.
You just never expect something like this to happen. Those were my boys in there.
15-year-old Roy Davis remembers 3 ambulances came out, but they only took the dead away. He vividly remembered the smell.
It took a month to get that scent off, that body scent.
Little Rock Fire Chief Gunn Nally said he had been with the department for 30 years, and this was the worst in lives lost that the city had ever seen. First responders were not the only ones at the scene. Arkansas Governor Orval Faubus arrived at 6:15 that morning.
That was right before sunup.
Orval Faubus knew this was a story he had to get out in front of, and he also knew how to play the game of politics.
Spin, spin, spin.
Or lie, lie, lie.
Exactly. Reporters at the scene said Faubus was visibly shaken by what he'd seen. I mean, who wouldn't be?
It was quite the year for old Orval. Remember, he was fresh off the Central High crisis when Eisenhower sent troops to Little Rock so black teens could attend school. Faubus responded by closing the city's public schools for the entire academic year. Of course, the boys' industrial school wasn't closed, and Faubus knew he better get to politicking.
There's supposed to be a man in each building to warn the boys of any such disaster as this. All the boys could have escaped before the fire cut off their means of exit had there been someone in the building with keys to unlock the doors. There's absolutely no reason for this to happen the way it did, except because of negligence on the part of someone. The building had no fire alarm system, not even a telephone. I went through the building and other facilities with Superintendent Gaines just last year. I gave special attention to the safety features, fire extinguishers, means of ingress and egress.
All that cost money, and there was no money for poor black kids in the budget.
Faubus was outraged and called for an investigation.
And that's when the politicking kicked into high gear.
This was perhaps the worst facility of them all, and it would not have happened here if adequate precautions had been taken.
Remember, there's plenty of blame to go around.
Yep, Faubus showed little concern for conditions at the school while the boys were working in the fields. His concern became visible only after 21 bodies were recovered, when attention turned to assigning blame.
The boys were locked in because the school's been plagued with runaways, but this would not have happened if there had been anyone with keys in the building.
Jim Hawley summed it up.
It just sounds like these kids worked all day in the field and were locked in a building at night.
Faubus was always quick to lay blame at another man's door.
The room for the employee was in the rear of the building near the quarters. I was informed by Superintendent Gaines and the man in charge of the building, Mr. Banks, that an adult employee was always on duty in the building to maintain discipline, direct recreation, and to provide for the safety of the boys.
Mr. Banks had been hospitalized for about 3 weeks. During that time, Superintendent Gaines reportedly assigned other men to watch over the boys.
Faubus was on the scene and digging for details to give the press.
According to the best information obtainable at the moment, there were 69 boys in the building. Of those, 48 escaped, and 21 burned to death before they could get through the windows.
Faubus found he could push some of the blame off on the staff.
All the personnel of the school were Negroes, and the board is composed of 3 Negroes and 2 white men.
Nothing like making it a race issue. Who was to blame? Everyone but Faubus.
I have known this place as a fire trap ever since I was down here.
Money can't fix everything, but if you're profiting from the labor of children, you could at least spend a little to keep their dormitory safe. Of course, should have, could haves, would haves. Never really does much of anything.
Immediately, Buddy Gaines pointed to electrical issues.
The fire started from defective wiring in the caretaker's room. The building went up in flames like matchsticks.
Buddy Gaines must have done a quick roll call. And what a solemn moment that must have been.
Imagine calling off name after name and hearing no answer over and over again.
That morning was chaos. Some boys who escaped ran off into the fields. For a while, the newspapers didn't know who had lived or who had died.
Buddy Gaines started the hard task of calling the parents.
Some of the parents are on the way here, but I'm afraid they won't be able to identify their own.
14-year-old Lindsay Cross was among those who died in the fire. He'd only been at the school since January. According to Griff Stockley, on the morning of the fire, Lindsay's mother, Luvina, was at home in North Little Rock, listening to gospel music on the radio, when news of the blaze broke out. A friend drove her to the school. What she found when she arrived was devastation.
Many years later, historian Griff Stockley interviewed Lindsay's mother while researching his book, Black Boys Burning.
What they showed me was burnt-up bodies all piled up together with reddened flesh. There was no way I could identify my boy.
Faubus hastily arranged a press conference the morning of the fire.
Nothing like striking when the mic's hot.
No surprise here, Faubus laid blame squarely on Superintendent Buddy Gaines.
A Negro boy was on duty in the recreation room. The Negro superintendent had not entrusted him with the keys to the locked doors. He had to break out of the main building to run for help. By this time, it was too late for any of the boys to escape through the door. Those who escaped got out through the broken windows.
The politicking and the ever-changing stories really did nothing to stop the questions.
The entire state was left reeling from the news, asking the same questions still raised today. How the hell did this happen? And this concludes part 2 of Locked Doors, Lost Boys on the Coroner's Report podcast. If you like what you've heard, please like, follow, and share. You can find us at thecoronersreport.net or on any social media platform at The Coroner's Report Podcast. Thanks goes out to our voice actors J.D. West, Alan Prather, and Savvy Valentine. Special thanks to Keith Hulse, Judge Steve Teskey, Marlon Weems, Dr. Brian Mitchell, Jim Hawley, and Guy Lancaster. This episode would not have been possible without the decades of research conducted by Griff Stockley for his book Black Boys Burning, the 1959 fire at the Arkansas Negro Boys Industrial School, published by the University Press of Mississippi. For additional context on race and history of the state, we recommend Race and Ethnicity in Arkansas, also from the University of Arkansas Press. We also want to thank Encyclopedia Arkansas, the Journeyman Newsletter on Substack, the Butler Center for Arkansas Studies, the Bobby Roberts Library of Arkansas History and Art, the Central Arkansas Library System, and the University of Arkansas Little Rock Center for Arkansas History and Culture. With any research project, we'd be lost without the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and AY Magazine. Copyright 2025 Aussie Grove Media Group, LLC.